and welcome to this National MS Education and Awareness Month teleconference, hosted by MS Focus, the Multiple Sclerosis Foundation, and made possible with support from Mylan, Genentech, Bristol Myers Squibb, Biogen, EMD Serono, Novartis, Sanofi Genzyme, and Janssen Neuroscience, a Johnson & Johnson company. I'm your host, Casey Minnis, Director of Communications for MS Focus, and I'm joined by Hollie Schmidt, who will be talking to us about how to evaluate health information on the Internet. Hollie Schmidt is the Vice President of Scientific Operations at Accelerated Cure Project for Multiple Sclerosis. She chairs the Research Committee of iConquer MS, which is a research network established to perform and support patient-centered research in MS. She also founded and leads the MS Minority Research Engagement Partnership Network, aimed at promoting racial and ethnic diversity in MS research. We're pleased to have her join us to present this timely topic. Hollie, thank you for being with us, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Casey, and thank you for inviting me to come and speak on this really fascinating topic. Welcome to everybody who's on the webinar. I'm very pleased to share with you some tips and guidance for evaluating health information you might find on the Internet. As you probably know, there's a lot of it out there. Some of it's great, some of it's so-so, some of it's terrible. It's important to know the difference. So I'm glad that you're here to hopefully learn a thing or two, and maybe at the end, if you have additional tips, you can share them with the group as well. I think the timing of this webinar is very interesting, occurring as the coronavirus situation is upon us and changing rapidly day by day. You've probably seen for yourselves the huge amount of information that's popping up everywhere. And so I'll get to use some examples of this tonight, as well as examples from MS and elsewhere in other fields. First, though, I want to share a bit of history that I found maybe a year or two ago. And I thought it was fascinating when I first came across it. Did you know that as recently as 1985, neurologists didn't always tell their patients that they had MS? It's true. They felt, some of them, not all of them, but some of them felt that the diagnosis would be depressing to their patients who have MS. And since they didn't have any treatment for MS, what would be the point of sharing that information? So perhaps, but can you imagine having your doctor withhold such a significant piece of information about your own health? It seems really unthinkable nowadays. So anyway, that was back in as recently as 1985, this was happening still. But also in 1985, guess what else was happening? The Internet was starting to gain traction. At that point, it was being used by researchers in their work, and also lots of other people were starting to make use of email to contact each other. So at the same time that some patients were being kept in the dark about their diagnosis, the Internet was growing and developing, and it ultimately would make it easier for all people to share and access information. And then if we fast forward to today, we have a wealth of information at our fingertips, thanks to the Internet and the various forms of digital media that are available. So, in the, 35 years since 1985, things have gotten a lot more empowering. So people with MS or people anywhere actually can look up medical articles, journal articles, the latest research on MS. They can have conversations with each other in discussion forums. They can find articles and blogs that give different perspectives on MS. They can participate in research online. And they can also be a more educated consumer. They can look up doctors or healthcare providers or clinics to see what other people have said about them. So there's a lot more that we can do with the Internet, and it's great. But as empowering as all of this is, it doesn't come without risks. And these include risks associated with inaccurate information. These risks include various things like harms to health from following bad advice, financial losses from buying products or services that don't live up to their claims, And perhaps this is underappreciated, but I think there's also harm caused when people get their hopes up about something that turns out to be too good to be true. Now, hope is essential to well-being, but you can lose your ability to hope if you experience enough disappointment. So these are all very real risks of consuming information on the Internet. The question is, when you're looking at information there, how can you tell what's real and what's bogus? Well, there are a number of strategies, and the first one I'm going to share is fundamental. Understand why people put bad information on the Internet in the first place. If you understand why this happens, you'll be better prepared to guard against it. So you can probably think of some reasons why people might lie on the Internet. I've come up with 5 myself. The first one I think is all too common, and you probably have experienced this yourself. People put bad information out there because they are trying to make money. So we all know that scam artists and fraudsters will outright lie to get your money. They know what it is people want to hear and what people want to believe is true, and they'll use that knowledge to manipulate people into parting with their money. We've had quack cures around for forever, probably. My favorite one is called pink pills for pale people. They were sold around the year 1900, and they were just a mixture of iron and magnesium sulfate, but they were touted as curing all kinds of ailments, including paralysis. They were marketed around the world and probably made that company a lot of money, which was a waste of money. So this is nothing new. In addition to watching out for scam artists, though, you also have to be careful with information from legitimate companies. Companies may be selective in what they share with the public. They may even overinflate a product's benefits in order to increase sales. So always keep this in mind. Be a little bit skeptical when evaluating information about health products and services that you're going to be asked to pay for. And then finally, the profit motive also applies to news media. This may be a little less transparent, but they make more money the more people view their content. So if they're writing about a new medical development, for instance, they might exaggerate the headline a bit. They might make it a little bit more sensationalistic in order to get you to click on that link because that helps their bottom line. So these are some ways in which the drive to make money can lead to bad health information on the Internet. Second reason why people post bad things or inaccurate information on the Internet is prestige and attention. I think this especially applies to social media sites. If the Internet has taught us anything, it's that people love attention. And in fact, it's been shown that lies actually spread faster than the truth on the Internet. So if you're posting something and you want people to pay attention to you, you're actually better off posting a juicy lie than the boring truth. And I find that incredibly sad because I still value the truth, but there you go. It's human nature. Other people want to look like an expert. They want to be the first to share new information, even if they're jumping the gun, even if it might not be 100% accurate. And you've probably seen examples of this also. I've got one example here from, again, the coronavirus field. This is a public health expert. He got excited about a preliminary report on the contagiousness of the virus, and he shared some of this report on Twitter. He was so excited that he led his tweet off with the phrase, in all caps, "Holy Mother of God." Unfortunately, some of the information in the report wasn't completely correct, and the tweet left out some important context. So he had an attention-grabbing headline, so people look at that, but he also then had inaccurate information, so that's not good. The person has since removed the tweet. It was pointed out that this is not proper. You should take it off, and he did, so to his credit. But it made enough of a splash that the magazine The Atlantic included it in a story called How to Misinform Yourself About the Coronavirus. And also another public health expert followed up with a tweet to clarify the original tweets, to sort of correct the record. Unfortunately, it got nowhere near the same amount of attention, probably because it didn't start with all caps, Holy Mother of God, but included some, sort of boring scientific data. So there you go. This is a way in which the desire for prestige or attention can lead to inaccurate information getting out onto the internet. The third reason is ideology and inflexible thinking. People can buy into a particular idea so strongly that they want to convince everyone of the rightness of their belief. And this can lead to making things up or just disregarding the truth if they feel that's what's needed to make their case. You might see this with people who are convinced that they found the cure for MS or for something else, and they feel so passionate about it that they lose their sense of objectivity. And of course, this also occurs in all aspects of life, not just health. Human beings can just have very strong beliefs, and this can override the desire to tell the truth sometimes. Of course, some inaccurate information on the internet isn't intentional. It results from maybe carelessness or honest mistakes. And these can be hard to spot because there's not a motive behind them. We just have to hope that they get noticed and they get corrected. And then finally, there are bad actors in the world, people with malicious intent who like to stir up trouble. You'll see this pretty apparently if you go to a comment section on any website. They seem to really attract these people in droves, and they're referred to as trolls. Why do people like to post harmful lies or nasty information or attacks on other people on the internet? I don't know. That's a question for the psychiatrist, but we just need to know that they're out there and to be able to guard against them. So now that we reviewed why bogus information gets on the internet in the first place, what can we do about it? Well, I think the first strategy is to know which sites are generally reliable, where you can go and be pretty sure that the information is okay. And I say generally because nothing is 100% reliable. Those oops situations happen even on the best of sites. So I'll go through some examples of sites that are fairly trustworthy, very trustworthy in most cases. Let's start with health sites that are maintained by government organizations. And in addition to websites, these agencies also usually have a presence on social media that you can follow if you do that. So we have many national U.S. organizations that have websites. The Centers for Disease Control, very popular these days, I have a feeling, with the viral situation. The Food and Drug Administration has a great website. There's a site called medlineplus.gov. It has health information, general health information that's maintained by the National Libraries of Medicine. And then the NIH.gov is the National Institutes of Health, which is a major research funder and research conductor in the U.S. And so they have a wealth of information as well. Looking beyond the U.S., there's the World Health Organization site. It's who.int. And the World Health Organization is the United Nations agency that works on behalf and with countries around the world. And then other nations as well, around the world will also have their own health authorities. So if you live in other countries or you're traveling to other countries or know people in other countries, you can check out that information. And then finally, down at a more local level, your boards of health in your town, city, or county will likely have a website, and also your state Department of Public Health will almost certainly have a website. So these are all very good sites to go to when you have questions, and again, you can be pretty sure that the information they post is reliable. Another great source of information is websites that are maintained by MS nonprofit organizations. And here's a partial list of organizations. It's not the complete list. I only had so much room on my slide, but you can see a few here. msfocus.org, which is by the MS Foundation, who's sponsoring this talk tonight. The National MS Society's website and the MS Association of America all have information on their sites. These organizations have a mission that includes staying on top of MS developments and communicating about them responsibly to the MS community. So they're very careful about what they post. Now, it used to be that in order to have a website that ended in .org or .org, you had to be a nonprofit. But I just learned that's no longer the case. So don't assume that just because a website ends in .org, that it's set up to serve a community for altruistic reasons. It might not be. What I usually do when I come across a nonprofit site or an apparent nonprofit site that I'm not familiar with is I click on the About Us link, and I look at that section. So I look at what's the mission, who is in charge, do they have a medical or scientific advisory board if it's a health-affiliated or health-associated organization. And here's an example at the bottom. From the MSAA's website, they posted an article about coronavirus and MS, what you need to know, and it says right there that it was reviewed by their Chief Medical Officer, Barry Hendon, MD. So that gives you a level of assurance that this is organizations on the up and up, and they're well informed and are passing along reliable information to the public. Another generally reliable source includes websites for leading hospitals and clinics. These do, of course, include information for patients about their services and their healthcare providers and how to make an appointment and how to get to the clinic and so on. But they often also have general health information for the general public that is very well vetted. This is a little tiny caveat, but is that these sites usually contain news releases about the research performed at those clinics. And these releases might play up the impact of this research just a bit in order to enhance the site or the clinic's image. So it's just something to be aware of. Not a huge concern, but always be a little wary when an organization is talking about its own work. Let's see. The next one is other sites that are run by companies who make a profit by running ads or showing featured content along with their own, or maybe selling data about, the number of visits or the people who are visiting their sites, et cetera. So they are commercial health sites. They are for profit. Some of them are listed here, WebMD.com, Healthline, Drugs.com, EverydayHealth.com. They are in the business of providing information to make money, but they also care about their reputations, and I think they're careful about what they post. One thing you should do if you are curious about whether a site that's for-profit but providing health information is legitimate is to review their policies. So if they're a legitimate site, they will have a link to their policies, and it should say things like, their advertising group is separate from the group that develops content, so they're not preferring to post content about the people who are paying for their ads, things like that. So take a look at their policies and make sure that, you feel that they're sound policies and you don't see any red flags there. Another really helpful thing you can do is scroll down usually to the very bottom of the page. Look for a couple of symbols. One is from Health on the Internet or Health on the Net, HON. It's an organization that evaluates Internet health sites as to whether they're providing reliable information or not. And the other one is called URAC or URAC. I don't know what that stands for. They just refer to themselves as URAC, so it probably used to stand for something. But anyway, it's URAC. Same thing. The companies that want to get a certification have to register with these organizations. They have to pay a fee. They have to demonstrate that they're providing reliable information, and then these URAC and HON will then go and check. They'll check into the sites. They'll make sure everything is as the company claims, and then they will allow the company to post these symbols on their site. They also do monitoring, so it's not just, they were good at one time, but, they may no longer be good. They do monitor. But what you want to do is once you find these symbols, don't just see that they're there. You can click on the symbols, and if they are using these symbols legitimately, then the clicking on the symbols will take you to the HON or to the URAC site, and there you can see the certificate. So here's an example on WebMD. I scrolled all the way to the bottom. You can see that both of those are there. So those are good ways of making sure that a commercial health site does provide legitimate information. Those are the generally reliable sites. There are a few others that can be useful, but you just want to be a little bit careful with them. One of them is clinicaltrials.gov, and this is another service of the U.S. National Libraries of Medicine. You may have been on it already. I know a lot of people with MS know about it if they're interested in participating in research. The site lists clinical trials that are or were or will be recruiting participants. So it's very comprehensive. Studies register with clinicaltrials.gov to put their information there because they know people go there and are looking. And so the studies that are trying to find participants is a good way of making that connection. However, it is a .gov website. It's a governmental website, but the government is not evaluating the studies that are registered there. So somebody who is doing what they call a study but is not really a study, it's more of they're selling a treatment of some type and calling it research, they can still post on clinicaltrials.gov. So you can't assume that just because you found it on this site, it's been vetted by the U.S. government and, it is a legitimate research study. So don't make that assumption. Do more research. Pharmaceutical company websites are another type of site that you can use, but just be a little bit careful. On the positive side, they are under strict regulations, very strict regulations about how they communicate with the public, especially concerning their drugs. They have very strict rules about what they can say and what they can't say about drugs that are licensed or made available for use by the public. However, do remember that they are also in the business of making money. They are responsible to the patient community. They do often, in my opinion anyway, care about the patient community or are trying to be helpful, but they are also responsible to their shareholders. So if they have a choice about what to say, they're going to highlight the positive aspects of their company and their products. Okay, so just be aware of this. There might be some type of bias in what they put out there because they are a for-profit company. Blogs are another good source of information. A lot of times there are some very good blogs out there written by people affected by MS as well as by members of the medical community. Remember, these are individual efforts, so the reliability of the content can vary. I've included one blog here that I really value. It's the Multiple Sclerosis Research blog from the BART's MS team, and that's a medical team from the UK. They send me emails, and you can sign up to get their emails as well whenever they have a posting. And their goal is to bring research information to the MS community. It does get a little technical, medical, scientific at times, but I think they do a great job of saying exactly what they think and how they feel about research that's coming down the pike. And they're also good about posting their conflicts of interest. So if one of their team members has been involved in a study and they write about it, they will point that out. And then finally, social media. Hopefully I don't have to tell people on this call not to believe everything you read on Facebook or Twitter. These sites are taking some proactive steps toward blocking blatantly harmful information. And you can see this headline at the bottom, Facebook to remove fake coronavirus bleach cure ads. I don't even want to know what that is. It sounds very scary. But there's no way they can ensure accuracy across their whole platform. So definitely be skeptical of anything you read on social media. So those are sites that you can either rely on very well or rely on partly. But you should also know how to spot fake information on the Internet in order to be a good Internet information consumer. So here are a few giveaways. Hyped up, overblown statements. A friend of mine who has a Facebook account sent me something that she saw on Facebook, and I'm paraphrasing this a little bit, but it was basically, this scientist is on the verge of curing MS. Well, that's wonderful. I was happy to see that. I clicked through a little further, read the article, and then I looked up the website of the scientist, and the scientist actually has a company, so I looked into that. Guess what? There's no clinical trials performed yet. In fact, there's not even a clinical trial that's about to launch. So it's a far cry to say that the scientist is on the verge of curing MS when the treatment that's being developed hasn't even been tested in humans yet. I tend to find that the more hyped up something is, the less there actually is to it. So that is a definite red flag. Sometimes accuracy comes at the expense of excitement as well as certainty. So I'm sharing an example from a newsletter I get every morning from the Cleveland Clinic, and it shows three separate research results in this snippet that I cut and pasted. And they don't say proven breakthrough, and they don't say on the verge of curing something. Instead, they say may explain, may have, may be able, right? It's a little bit boring. It's nothing to write home about. But medical research usually goes in small steps like this. You know, things get tried, you find something, then you have to test and verify it, and then you take the next step. So this kind of language, while it's not exciting, is actually a very good sign that the information is accurate. Okay, another red flag is overly broad claims. So I cut and pasted this from a stem cell clinic website, and stem cell clinics are all over the place. There is legitimate stem cell research happening, various types of stem cell studies actually. So it's very exciting, promising field of research. But stem cells have really captured the public's imagination because they're very powerful cells, and so people want to believe that these very powerful cells can do magical things. And people who want to make money off of this hope have set up clinics to do various things with stem cells that are unproven, can be risky, and definitely not in the best interest of the people who come to those clinics. So one of the red flags that I found on this one stem cell clinic's website is overly broad claims. They claim that their treatment can cure everything from multiple sclerosis to erectile dysfunction to lung disease, et cetera. So to me, this does not sound very realistic that this treatment from this clinic can do all of these things. It doesn't really stand up to what I know about science and medicine. So definitely be on the lookout for anybody with a treatment that claims to do a lot more than typical treatments can do. This is also another red flag, no scientific evidence, only anecdotes and testimonials. And I have, again, a little screenshot here from another stem cell clinic site where they have patient success stories. I didn't actually watch these videos. I think I know what they're going to say. But if they are real patients, and they may not be, there's no guarantee that they are. And if they're really talking about how this clinic has helped them, I would say it's probably likely due to the placebo effect. You may have heard of the placebo effect. If you think you're taking something that's helpful, you'll feel better. You'll probably feel better. And this actually even works even when you tell people you're giving them a placebo. They still get the placebo effect. People like to believe that the thing that they're trying is working, especially if they've paid tens of thousands of dollars to a stem cell clinic to get stem cells. They're really more motivated to believe that these stem cells are having an effect. So, it's not surprising that, again, if these are real patients, that a clinic was able to find customers who would say good things right after their treatment. I have a feeling that many of these people, if you asked them, 1 year, 2 years, 5 years later, that effect would not have been sustained. So don't believe anecdotes and testimonials. Look for scientific evidence that's been reviewed and published, and not just published on the company's or the clinic's own websites. A couple more red flags. First one is referring to all natural or ancient. A lot of bogus health claims appeal to people's desire for natural products or solutions that have stood the test of time. But just because something is natural or has been around for a while doesn't make it effective. Garlic is natural, and we've been eating it for eons, but we know that it does not cure coronavirus, as some people are claiming. So watch out for that red flag. And then on the flip side, super high-tech mumbo-jumbo. Some fraudulent claims rely on overcomplicated high-tech jargon. The idea is that people will assume that because they can't understand it, it must be advanced, and therefore it's a breakthrough. Not true. If you're interested in something that you don't fully understand, feel free to ask a trusted source about it, but in the meantime, remain skeptical. Keep an open mind. Okay, so we reached the last section. I'm going to give a bit of summary along with a few additional tips on how to protect yourself. So the first tip is to, again, protect yourself by considering what the motives are behind the communication. If there's money involved, remember there might be a motive to lie about the claim in order to get your money. Remember prestige and attention, about ideology and inflexible thinking, about honest mistakes, and then about ill intent and malicious activity. Check other internet sources. So Snopes.com is one of the more famous fact-checking sites. It's been around for a long time, and they do have plenty of posts on their site that debunk medical claims, so that's a good place to look. There are other sites as well. Another thing you can do if you get something, if you see something on social media or in an article or something like that, and you can cut and paste the text, just put that into your Google browser and do a search for it and see what comes up. So I did that with a claim. There was a list of, quote-unquote facts that were going around about the coronavirus. So I just took one of them and I pasted it in, and this is what I got. So the fact or the claim was, if you have a runny nose and sputum, you have a common cold, not COVID-19. And the actual truth is that these are symptoms for the common cold, but they don't rule out COVID-19. So that's an easy thing to do, and you might actually find that it's been debunked already and you can move on. You can also check with watchdog organizations, particularly where there's a company involved or some kind of profit motive. So the Better Business Bureau is a good place to check. The FDA is a great place to check. They've been doing some work on, I think they need to do more, but they've done some work on fraudulent stem cell clinics, and then also may have some advice about drug therapies. Claims, and then also your local attorney general may be of help as well in certain cases. Again, check with trusted sources. So I again posted the HON and the URAC logos there to remind you to click on those when you see them on a website. But also, if you have a question about something somebody told you or something you found on the internet, ask your healthcare provider what they think about it. Or reach out to the patient organization or more than one patient organization to see what they think about it. And then also, your friends, your family, other people with MS, they can be very helpful for a sanity check on something, especially something that, you think sounds too good to be true. That's always a good sign that you should check with somebody else. And then finally, again, look for those boring words like may and might. Don't get drawn in by hype. The hype usually indicates there's something fishy going on, not altogether reliable. So stick with the kind of safe and solid and not exciting, but probably more accurate language that you will find on reliable sites.
Our sincere thanks to our sponsors for their support of National MS Education and Awareness Month, to all our callers for attending tonight and participating, and especially to Hollie Schmidt. Hollie, thank you so much for this really important information. We can tell that you put a lot of care and thought into developing it, so thank you for sharing it with us.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.